Welcome to the Paws Effect podcast, a platform where we dive deep into the world of pets, their well-being and their stories. I'm your host, Dr. Cara, a dedicated veterinarian with a passion for all things pet. Today we have an extraordinary guest. Joining us, a true pioneer in the world of pet care, Mark Slaughter, one of the founders of Legacy Pet Crematorium, a place where values of dignity, integrity and compassion aren't only words, but a way of life. Mark's journey spanning over 27 years has brought solace to countless pet owners. Get ready for a heartfelt conversation that's sure to touch your soul. Before we dive into today's topic, I want to take a moment to talk about something that has been causing quite a buzz in the pet world lately. Have you heard about the harvest table? If you've been following our previous episodes, you might remember our enlightening conversation with Bronwyn Anderson, the marketing manager at the harvest table. They've recently launched a remarkable new range of pet products. And folks, you do not want to miss this. I've had the pleasure of learning about their innovative collagen powder for pets, and it's truly impressive. But here's the deal. To fully grasp the significance of this new range, I highly recommend checking out their previous podcast with Bronwyn Anderson. It's packed with insights about how the harvest table is contributing to the pet industry. So here's your mission if you choose to accept it. Listen to that previous episode, and trust me, you'll be just as excited as I am about their new pet products. It's like a game changer for our furry friends. And after you've done that, be sure to explore their new range. It's all about keeping our pets healthy. The harvest table has some fantastic options to help with just that. All right, now that we've got that covered, let's dive into today's episode. You have a fascinating journey, and we've been talking about it off air, but I am desperate for our listeners to hear Legacy and the origins.
Yeah, so thank you. Legacy started, I suppose, back in 91, 92, where Dean and Dave and myself, we were at Stellenbosch University, and we, as you do at university, have some projects to do around, we were all doing commerce degrees, entrepreneurship type projects and ideas, and so David had this idea. He said, well, what about, and I think at that stage he said, we burn animals. It was a bit crude the way he would say it then, but it was like this novel idea. So that was the kind of genesis of the idea back at Stellenbosch, and we kind of, as young students, thought, well, sure, let's go and explore that. And so the reason he was saying that is his stepfather was involved in medical waste in Johannesburg and said that they were struggling with animal carcasses. And at the similar time, there was an article in the newspaper, in the local East Rand newspaper, about a guy that went to the dump to dump his garden refuse and found his own dog lying there that had been put down kind of a couple of weeks before. And that was very traumatic, and it made the front page of the paper. And so we thought, okay, this is actually a problem. And so I think even during the holidays, we were going to speak to a few vets, and we did some research, and we said, well, what about a professionally administered pet crematorium where you can look the client in the eye and you can tell them this is where your pet, has landed up. And I think, we were young at the time. The business was called Envirocin, and at that stage, we actually thought we'd venture more into medical waste than the pet space. We didn't, I suppose, realize the pet space was as big as it's become. And so, even the name Envirocin took a more environmental angle. It was like environmental incineration. It's a far more, and still is, in my mind, a far more clean way to deal with waste, So our first mission was to get all the pets off landfill, and which has certainly happened in KZN and in Gauteng. We are fighting hard in Cape Town. I can't believe that Cape Town there's still a lot of animals being landfilled there.
Is that right? And
we have offered an option there, so I think it's going to change soon. But that was our first mission. So for your pet owner to know, and certainly for the vet, it was awkward for vets to have to, and sometimes the vets would be there in your practice, and the council would rock up with those big skip wastes, and their clients in the parking lot, and in the back there are animals like flying through the air onto the top of waste bins, and that just wasn't great at all. But it was the only option available, and so it was just the right time for that kind of service.
There was a need,
and that was 1996. There was a need, 100%. There was a problem, and good businesses solve problems, and so that was the start of the journey, and I mean it's been a good journey. It's 27 years later,
and
so
you're still in the.
And so all three
3D.
partners are still very much involved. I think it's been delightful in many ways. It's been great. I mean, I suppose I didn't wake up. I remember at school, you have those moments. What are you going to be? What are you going to be? I would never have imagined I would have a pet crematorium, but I think I always knew I'd be involved in an entrepreneurial space, and yet the journey. So I wouldn't say we wake up passionate about cremating pets, but we have become passionate about working together, and it's been a delightful business, and we just have such a great relationship, and that in itself has been a journey of leadership and understanding how to lead and using our gifts, and that's been a really great journey. But also it's been a great journey to literally, I've grown in my appreciation of the unique, beautiful gift that animals are to people, and then being able to help them really celebrate their pet by offering a really compassionate, integrous, dignified end. And so that gives us, and to do that well, and to do that, and to be honest, I think, we've traveled the world. I've gone to the UK, I've been to the US, I've looked at a lot of pet crematoriums around, and obviously got ideas from them. But our facility in Cape Town, which we've had not 20 years experience or 25 years experience before we set up in Cape Town, is world class. I don't think there's anything in the world that compares to that. But that's just been some of the pleasure of being able to take an idea and mature it over many years, also with the market.
Yeah, it's been evolving.
And it has, because the market also, when we started, the market didn't even know. Like people would think it's weird. I mean, even people think, people would say, from a vet, people say, you must think I'm silly because I'm so upset about the loss of my pet. And that has changed big time in 25 years, where people have realized, actually, no, it's a real grief. And don't try and sweep it under the carpet, because it's good it's actually okay to feel sad that a pet that's been part of your family, even though you might think it hasn't, but it absolutely has. I mean, I've sat with policemen, and this animal has literally saved their life, and he's wanted to witness a cremation, and we've sat there for 4 hours hearing how this. So animals play huge parts in people's lives, and we've had the opportunity over the years to even see that grow.
Yeah, and it's a great opportunity to teach your children how to cope with grief. When are you otherwise in a position to be able to take them through that journey?
So grief, I mean, we talk about teaching our children, but people don't know how to deal with grief.
Well, I think it was always, historically for us, it was something that, even with putting your pet to sleep, possibly because of the structure at the time, we were just not part of. You'd come back and, Fluffy would be gone.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's interesting to see how it might have changed, because I remember going in to put Flash down. Flash was my first, we had Bouviers, and he was my puppy. And I remember, what do you do? Do you stay? Do you go? Do some vets offer the option? And then you feel like, what does that look like when we're going to euthanize? And I must say, it's actually one of the most beautiful ways to die, I think, for animals. I mean, because they literally do go to sleep. We put them to sleep, and I think there's just a lot of, anyway. I mean, I think over the years, and for people's journey, their own journey, I think death is something that's it's hard for people to talk about. I mean, even for us as a business, how do you market it? How do you talk to people about it? And that's been also an interesting journey, to just, I suppose, speak about the reality of death.
It's inevitable. We're all going to face it. Yeah.
It's very important how you talk to kids about it, because they are going to, whatever you say, they will remember. So, there's nothing wrong, so how do you deal with it? You, I think, be honest with them.
Absolutely.
And obviously be appropriate, but deal with, and I think we've got some good literature in our brochures around.
You've got a lot of support in terms of.
What to say to your pets.
And now, a word from our amazing sponsors who make the Paws Effect podcast possible. To make a promise implies trust. To make a pledge creates expectation. And to make a commitment initiates responsibility. For more than 25 years, we have made it our mission to take the ifs, buts, and maybes out of premium pet food. That's why our experts put the best science behind our food, so your pet's health is put first. That's why, when you seek value, we strive to give you more, like protecting your pets with our free accident benefits. And when you need great tasting food, our fresh meat taste delivers. You see, what sets us apart is not one thing, it's all these things combined. Because we understand that when it comes to your pet's health, you don't want doubt and uncertainty, you want absolutes, the absolute best given your means, like premium veterinary quality food of real value that doesn't cost an arm and a paw. So, rest assured that any claim we make, we stand by. It's our commitment to your pets and our promise to you. In fact, we're so confident in what we stand for that we have made the ultimate promise to you. It's called the Ultra Pet Promise, 100% money-back guarantee, a no ifs, no buts, and no maybes kind of promise. We call it our satisfaction guarantee. Welcome back to Just for Pets. You're with Dr. Cara.
Hi, Doc. It's Jackson the Jack Rossi here, and boy am I itchy.
Are you on a hypoallergenic diet?
Hyper what now?
Changing to a special diet will really help. And Just for Pets have a massive range. And flea and tick medication, special shampoo.
Ooh, how quick can you get some?
Order today and we'll deliver pronto.
I feel better already.
Justforpets.co.za. Vet approved, pet adored. Get it all to your door.
Let's get back to our conversation on the Paws Effect podcast.
But the industry has definitely changed over 27 years. You know, people,
So take me through that. How are things different now too?
So I think, without trying to get too, we've got to be careful. The reality is, and I think it's important that people know the truth. I really do. Like, landfill is not burial is landfill. It's not like there are alternatives now in South Africa of cremation, which is a far cleaner. You know, we have environmental impact assessments done before we set up a crematorium. We have AELs. There's a lot of compliance around how we do it to protect the environment in terms of how we actually, use our machines. So that's important to know. But also then it is environmentally a better process for the environment. So I think that's the first thing to say.
Can I ask you, just sort of to also get some clarification, what is the legal standpoint here in this country? Are you allowed to bury your pets?
So the different municipalities have different bylaws, but in general, certainly in Joburg, there's bylaws that don't want you to bury pets in the garden. I would think as a broad principle, is not a good idea for a number of reasons. You want to control what happens in the underwater grounds, underwater system. So if a lot of pets and things are getting buried all over the place, it's going to pollute your underground water. And we know how water is such a precious resource now. And I think there's practicality around just weighing up the cost of digging a hole in your garden if you've got other pets coming dig it up, versus just doing cremation. So legally, different municipalities have different laws. I think, obviously, if you're on a farm, I think you've got more space to do that. But in general, it's not a good idea.
Yeah. And you're offering from domestic pets. We've sent birds and little mice to horses.
Horses, yeah. So I think over the years we've cremated almost everything, because whether it be some wildlife, we've even done Gambit, the dolphin, in KZN here. So we've done anything from a hamster to a horse, and wildlife as well, pigs. Some people have pigs as pets. So we offer, and we're a dedicated pet crematorium. I think that's another important part of.
Clarify.
We don't do other waste, so it's dedicated pets, and I think that also impacts on the environmental aspect, emissions. That it's only pets. It's not like plastics and a whole lot of other things. And so there's a lot of environmental compliance around how and what goes into the cremators and how we do it. And we focused on pets, and that's one of the things that's really it's been something over the years that we've again realized that where they, I suppose, fall in a waste categorization in terms of the nature of a euthanized or a dead body, but there's a massive emotional weight to how we deal with those dead bodies, because they've been precious to people. And so we are categorized environmentally in a waste sector, but we operate very emotionally, in terms of doing it in a way. So, we came up with our values of dignity and integrity and compassion. And so we'd like to say for a pet owner that we try to bring those values into every part of the process. From how they stored at the vet to how they transported back to the crematorium to how they're placed in the cremators. And listen, you can't make fire and burning look attractive, but you can absolutely try to do it in a way that brings dignity and compassion and integrity in. And so that's been our journey as well over the years.
So in terms of the offering, let's go into, explain to the listeners, you have communal cremation, and then you obviously have the
Ashes
ultimate individual cremation where you can have return of ashes, or you even have other opportunities now for people to have a keepsake. What is communal cremation?
And again, that comes back to that journey and how the markets change over the years. I think it was great to take pets off landfill and rather do cremation. And so the nature of dealing with a lot of welfare animals as well. So in many ways we would do pauper burials or pauper cremations because those are the welfare. So it's quite a high volume. So there's a demand for and need for communal. But as we've seen the market grow over the years, there's a huge demand. People have said, but what about getting our ashes back? And so even when we started the business, we didn't think that would be something that would be quite requested. But from the inception of the business, we had people wanting their pets' ashes back. So we had to then, we developed we started just by giving ashes back in wooden caskets. And again, from the beginning, we always wanted a standard of excellence. So even from the start of our journey at Legacy, we would get people coming back and say, wow, I've got my grandparents' ashes in a cardboard box, and here my pets come back in this beautiful casket. And but that's just been, it's been a great part of the journey to just bring excellence to what we're doing. And so that's absolutely developed now. And we've recognized how even grief, I think we're just exploring grief. It's the early days of exploring grief and exploring how vets handle it with customers. That's another whole story. But just in the various options we have now, that is starting to help people deal with their grief or have a meaningful and also beautiful. A lot of the products we've really tried to make beautiful products. Like a gravestone. A gravestone's a gravestone, but we've got jewellery now. We've got ashes made into glass pieces, and jewellery, and we've had ashes made into diamonds. We've had ashes in biotree urns that grow into beautiful trees. So it starts to say this is a creative, beautiful way to celebrate life and to also honour. Your pet is a legend, legacy. And so that was another huge change that happened midway, probably 10 years ago. We changed our name, and that at that time we realized, wow, okay, this market for pets is way bigger than we thought. It's way more niched than we thought and nuanced. And so we actually changed our name from Envirison to Legacy. And it was actually after 20 years. And to change your name after 20 years is a big story, But we went to the vets, and it was interesting talking to our clients because the vets have appreciated, like with Envirison, even when we started, we wore like doctor's coats. We said to vets that you are professionals. We want to give our business, we're an extension of who you are. So at that time, even vets were wearing like white jackets. So we rocked up in our white jackets in Virison. But they appreciated the cleanliness, and of the service. And I think even back then, it was interesting. We as you do in the industry, you get all these different surveys. And someone had done a survey on veterinary. And they'd ask customers, how do you rate a vet? What do you look for when you go to a vet clinic? And the thing that was highest on all these responses was cleanliness. And I was interested with that. People love clean. And so I think even for us, like it was quite clinical, our service up front. And then we realized, okay, but we need to be more emotional. And I think veterinary as well has changed. I look at the vets, the young vets now. Like you've got, in some of these vets I've been in, they've got, couches in their rooms. Even the furniture is less clinical. And that's been part of our journey as well, is to, like that moment where you are euthanizing a pet on like at a stainless steel table can be quite harsh. How can we bring more emotion or help emotion in that. So we do comfort rooms now in some of the practices. We offer like a different space where you can say goodbye
and spend time and not be rushed.
And not be rushed. And so we explore. So that's how it's we've and it. I think, and I don't think I know this. Like we've made it's not, and even to say hocus pocus, like people's emotions and saying goodbye, like it's a very real thing. And people often say, "Oh, you must think I'm being silly because I'm so upset about my pet." And I think, like, thank goodness you're upset about your pet. If you're not upset about that, I mean,
what kind of suppressing
what
are
kind
you
of person
doing?
are you? 100%. Like if you have zero emotion when your dog dies, like you're probably quite hurt yourself. And listen, that's another whole rabbit trail around the grief journey. But we are realizing that this has now become an opportunity for us to say, how do we not only deal with a very real issue, like what happens with my pet when it dies? It's a very practical issue, and I think we need to do the practical stuff well.
Absolutely.
But it's not just practical. There's also a very real emotional dynamic. Like with all things in life, you can do it well or you can do it badly. You can break up in a relationship well or badly. You can respond to any challenge well or badly. And I think there's a way to do grief well, and I think there's a way to do grief badly. And we've got to figure out, if that's the industry, and how do we help people do it well.
So what is some of the advice that you give? I think sometimes perhaps it's easier if you can anticipate that this is going to happen. Obviously, in the event that you suddenly lose a pet, you don't always have that opportunity to kind of come to terms with it and make those sort of practical decisions. But maybe having conversation ahead of time and saying, a bit like wills and things, people are now going, in the event of my pet dying, this is what I want to do. Yeah. And I think, other than an opinion or a guidance or an experience from someone else, you only know what to do when it happens, when you're in that position. Yeah. So like how would you advise people go, and even the practical decision of, do you have the ashes back? Yeah. Do you scatter the ashes? Do you keep the ashes? I obviously I've gone through it all. I've buried pets in the garden. I've had the ashes returned in your scatter box, which is beautiful with the rose petals. I mean, we've done that. Often when I get the ashes back, I'm a bit like, now what? I'm not saying I grieve within 2 weeks of receiving them, but it sort of it brings back all those emotions, and often you don't know, which is why I love some of your new offerings of the you can grow a tree. So like, how do you make the decision as to what to do?
I think, I suppose the first thing I always ask, you got to look at yourself and say, how do you deal with any kind of challenge? I think the first thing is to, I suppose, be quite real and honest. I think, like, don't. I kind of advise people to be real about their emotion, and I think the challenge is, emotion is a very deep thing. Let me say this, and then we'll come back to the question. So I remember driving my car out of our site. It was raining, pouring with rain, and there was a guy, and there was a big puddle of water, and there was a guy like in his clapped out car. He was like, it ran a garden service, and it was his whole windscreen was misted up, and he was like staring out the window to try and see where he was going, and I was getting frustrated that he was going so slowly, so I went next to him, and then as I came next to him, my car went so slowly that I just went alongside this huge puddle and just completely soaked him, and then eventually got past. Then my car stopped about 300 meters up the road because I'd obviously wet the carburetor or something, and he got out and he had a crowbar in his hand and he was going to take me out, and I realized for that guy, he's probably had, I don't know, like a really tough life. It's now raining, he can't see out his thing, maybe his business is battling, and now some young guy just comes and completely soaks him, and it just threw him over the edge. And I think when it comes to the loss of a pet, I think you've got to be aware that often a lot of emotion that comes out is rooted in a whole lot of stuff. And so you can just again put it on a carpet, and it often becomes a trigger for a whole lot of other things. And I think that's where I've become aware that you can just carry on, but it becomes another opportunity. Like any death is an opportunity to contemplate, like, what is life about, especially because death is reality, and it's a reality for all of us. And when it happens to your animal, whether you like it or not, you're facing a reality that's going to happen to yourself. And so, you can choose to deal, and people will deal with it in multiple ways. And even people that say, it's nothing, just, grow a pair of pants and stiff up a lip. That's cool, but I can tell you that I know human beings. Like, we are complex, we are emotional, and death is a reality, and no one likes death. No matter how hardcore you think you are, like, it's a difficult thing. So I think the first thing I would just say is, like, just be real about the reality that, in a positive way, it can be a time. The Bible will say it's better to be at a funeral than a place of celebration. Why? Because it actually gets you to contemplate what am I doing here on this earth? And we might think, that doesn't happen with a pet. Why not? It does. Because that pet, let me tell you, has been a part of your life, and now that's something that's been part of your life is taken away, and that will bring all kinds of emotion. And so I suppose my encouragement to people is to take every opportunity in life to deal with stuff, because we all have stuff. And so and that's where it can be a really positive experience. Like that guy he was so messed up with a whole lot of life. He was so angry when I went past him and wet him. Like, all his emotional that was a trigger for all of his life's issues.
To spill.
And so I think these moments of death become triggers for all kinds of stuff. And I suppose my advice is to say, don't poo-poo it away. Use like anything in life. It's an opportunity to say, well, let me celebrate. Let me first do this well. So, and I think what I've realized, what I realized with pets, I had a Labrador, right, that had a skin issue. And it was expensive to deal with. I tried every food, the story. And yet I would watch this dog just itching and itching and itching. And I realized, like, I did not feel good because my dog was in continuous pain. As much as I could say it's just a pet, it wasn't like a child, one of my children. But I know I did not feel good because I didn't feel like I was being a responsible pet owner, because this dog was not getting. And I realized, like, whether you like it or not, the way you look after things affects how you feel. And I also believe the way you say goodbye to your pet will either make you feel okay or not okay. You can say, I don't care. That's probably not I would say you're probably not in a good space if you don't care. And so it becomes an opportunity to really reflect, And so, like, it's deep, and a lot of people say, well, that's way too deep. I could say that's fine, that's where you're at. But the truth is, I know at some point in your life, you are going to be facing something that's, like, hard for you, and like, how are you going to cope with that? How are you? And I think the way to cope with these things is just, first of all, to be real and to talk about it, to do it well, and whatever that might mean for you. I don't know, it can be different for everyone, and that's why we've got these different ways to say goodbye. But I think there's a lot to be said for that moment. You might take one of our garden memorials and say, you know what, my dog always lay under that tree there. I'm going to go and place it there, and I'm going to feel I've done good. I've given integrity. I've given dignity. I've given I've honored that pet and what that pet did in my life. And that's a good thing, because if I do that for my pet, you know what? I'll start doing that for my co-worker. Yeah. And that's the really deep end of some of the, I suppose, opportunities we've had, is to say, imagine this. Imagine the way we helped people grieve their pet actually made them, or enabled them, or triggered them becoming better people. Because they've done a process that's often very difficult for people, but they've done it actually quite well. And so that's been our journey of saying, like, if we bring excellence into the way we say goodbye to our pet, it might to some people think, geez, that's crazy. I mean, we do. I mean, I've had people at dinner parties, like, burst into laughter, my name, Slaughter, like, pets. And I say, God has got a sense of humor, why? But the reality is serious business. And we can laugh about it, but I know that death knocks on all of our doors, and it's going to turn you upside down, inside out. Life does that.
But it allows you to do the work that's required, perhaps,
exactly.
for...
And if we can help you have a good moment or do something well, maybe that triggers you doing something well in all kinds of areas of life.
So what about the guilt? What about the guilt associated with it? Whether it's, I've spoken a bit on whether to stay or go. And my message is very much that I know, certainly within our practice, that what happens behind the closed door is exactly as what you were present. We try and make those final moments as calm and pleasant and caring as possible. But a lot of people go, I don't want to stay because I'm either making my pet feel more anxious, or I'm like, I know practically, obviously, I put my animals to sleep because I want to be as calm as possible. I want to provide the same kind of comfort that they've provided me. But I think a lot of people go, I don't know whether to stay because I'm getting myself so worked up. Is it okay to cry? Like, is it okay? Are they upset by it? There is no right or wrong answer, I know, but I'd love to hear your opinion on it.
So guilt is a very real emotion that plagues everyone on multiple levels. And I think for me, one of the hardest people to forgive is yourself. So again, we need to be real about life. We are not all going to live forever, nor is a pet. And we are passionate about building with vets, and because we've been serving vets for 27 years, we feel we've always started up by working with vets, and we are very aware of the challenge often vets have in trying to navigate a very difficult decision. And I want to say that literally 99% of people trust your vet. Trust your vet's diagnosis of a problem, and having something of an objective opinion to really help. But, and this is the thing, don't put that decision on the vet, which is what everyone... And so this is, again, a human condition, is people don't want to take responsibility. And so what they do is they pass the responsibility onto you. And that, again, is a very disempowered, it's a very weak and unfortunate human trait. And I think we have to own it ourselves and say, and own it from a good space of, what, I've had this amazing pet for a while. It's suffering. It's now time to say goodbye. And we're going to say goodbye in a really, by going to sleep, which is a beautiful way to say goodbye. But own the decision yourself and forgive yourself. And I don't think it's hard if you honestly have done all you can. As I'm saying that, I'm thinking in my brain, and you'll know this probably more than I do, but what happens when people don't have enough money? And I think those are hard things. I don't know necessarily if there are easy answers to that.
I suppose you just do what you can within your capacity.
But you know what, hey?
And forgive yourself for that.
You've got to, I think grace, there's got to be grace for people. There's got to be grace, we've got to be gracious to ourselves. I think we don't live in a perfect world, and we've tried our best. And I think people need to forgive themselves. And I think that's how you deal with guilt. And guilt will kill you. I mean, guilt is a horrible thing. And God forgives you. Why did you forgive yourself?
And when you're trying to direct people to get help if they are struggling, I mean, obviously I know you've got some resources on your website that people can tap into. Do you think professional help, or do you think...
We've explored that. I mean, we have explored that over the years. We years back thought, what about a grief counsellor? It's an interesting thing. I think it's very intense, the grief that happens at the time. And I think what we have seen is that quite soon people bounce back, and then so they do bounce back. Whether it be that life just does kick on. I think it is true. Life kicks on and suddenly So I'm not sure there's as great a demand for counselling. And if there was, which is very real, it's going to be, like I say, often a death of a pet will trigger a lot of other stuff that needs to be dealt with. And I think that is a good... Then I would say to you, as an owner, if stuff has been triggered, you probably need to spend some time over a long period with some professional, or, dealing with some stuff. And again, that's using this opportunity. But in terms of I think, how do we help people in the time? I think it's, like I said, the way we do things. I think vets, we've tried to use our brochure as a means to communicate. And one of the things we've said is go easy on your vet. Like just some really practical things around, like even vets can make mistakes as well. They're human. And can you forgive your vet as well? I mean, that's another, the reality is vets are dealing with patients that can't communicate. I mean, they do communicate, but not in English or in a language that we understand. So, I think people really have to give vets great. They really do, and that's big on our agenda from an industry,
support.
Support is how do we support vets and educate people. I continuously educate people around. Do you understand veterinary is one of the toughest jobs you can have? And everyone thinks, but they just love animals and they just spend all day looking after people. No, it's one of the most challenging occupations you can have. They are doctors, they are anaesthetists, they are dentists, they are surgeons, they are practice owners. All these things. If you go for a cruciate ligament op, you've got the hospital that's run by somebody else, you've got the anaesthetist that does something else, you've got the surgeon, and you've got a whole lot of nurses, and the vet's all of that. And you're dealing, or she's dealing with an animal that can't speak.
Yeah. And then dealing with loss.
Give
and then
them a
your
break.
next appointment, you've got to be upbeat and.
Give your vet a break. I'm big on that, and I'll say it again. I really mean that. Like, don't expect. And then the worst thing is people don't want to pay.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I mean that's another whole discussion. But I think to say with all these things, that I suppose when we started this business, we had an opportunity which we didn't realize at the time was as big, and we didn't intuitively even realize. Even over my life, my understanding of pets and the role they play in people's lives has changed, and I've grown to appreciate it in a very real way. Because I think people have thought, no, it's just an animal, but I've appreciated, no, it's not just an animal. No. They are animals, and we've also been very clear to draw a line between pets and humans. They are not humans. And I do think there's a space where you start treating an animal like a human is not a human. And we've drawn a line, very clear, that's not healthy. But it's definitely not healthy to abuse, and certainly not, there's a lot of space for people to become more responsible.
More engaged with their pets.
Yeah, in the way they steward a gift. Because that's what it is. Pet is a gift. It's a created, amazing gift that you can look after well or not well. And we can take care of the cremation well or not well. And we really try to do that well and partner with vets in doing that.
That's wonderful. So we're going to take a break.
Yep.
Thank you. Very fascinating. And when we come back, let's chat about IdentiPet. Thank you for joining us in this enlightening conversation with Mark Slaughter, one of the directors of Legacy Pet Crematorium. Their commitment to dignity, integrity, and compassion serves as a beacon of hope in the pet care industry. Before we say goodbye, I invite our listeners to connect with us on social media. Follow me at UltraPetVet on Instagram to stay updated with our latest episodes. Please like, subscribe, and review the episode. And if you found this interesting, please share the podcast to spread the word and provide comfort to pet owners who may be in need. Join us again next week for another heartwarming episode. Until then, remember to give your pets an extra hug from me and continue to cherish the moments with your furry family members. We have an exciting announcement to make. We are looking for guest speakers who are passionate about the pet industry and sponsors to support future episodes. Are you an expert in pet training, nutrition, or behavior? Maybe you're a veterinarian with insights to share, a pet store owner with unique experiences, or a pet product inventor. We want to hear from you. The Paws Effect podcast is a platform for industry professionals like you to showcase your knowledge, experiences, and stories. As a guest speaker on our podcast, you'll have the opportunity to share valuable information, engage with our audience, and have your voice heard in the pet community. Whether you want to discuss training techniques, emerging pet care trends, or the importance of mental stimulation for pets, we want to feature you and your expertise. So, if you're passionate about pets and have something to say, we invite you to join us on an upcoming episode of the Paws Effect podcast. But wait, that's not all. The Paws Effect podcast is also seeking sponsors to support our mission of educating and entertaining pet lovers worldwide. By becoming a sponsor, you'll gain exposure to our engaged audience and have your brand associated with the love and care that we have for our four-legged friends. If you own a pet-related business, offer pet products or services, or simply want to align your brand with our pet-loving community, we'd love to partner with you. As a sponsor, your brand will be featured prominently in our episodes and our social media channels. It is a great opportunity to showcase your offerings to a dedicated audience of pet enthusiasts. So whether you're an expert in the pet industry looking to share your knowledge, or a business seeking to reach a pet-loving audience, we want to hear from you. To apply as a guest or to inquire about becoming a sponsor of the Paws Effect podcast, please contact me at drkara@pawsandeffect.co.za. Get in touch and let's discuss the various opportunities. Thank you for joining us today. We can't wait to welcome our future guest speakers and sponsors to the Paws Effect podcast. Remember, every episode is an opportunity to celebrate our four-legged friends.